committee has two roles. One is to vote on JSR's specifications as they work their way through the process. There is a formal process for that. I'll say a little more about that later. But also they define the way that the organization itself is structured and is organized and how it functions. They're elected by the membership. These are the current members of the executive committee. We've got a mixture of big companies and small companies, people who supply technologies such as Intel or HP, and people who use them such as Credit Suisse, a big banking company. We have Twitter, we have two Java user groups, So Java from Brazil and the London Java community, and we have a couple of individuals. So we've got a nice mixture of people representing different aspects of the Java community serving on our executive committee. I don't need to go into this. We've got a whole bunch of members, 700 or so, half of them in North America, a third in Europe and Russia, 15% or so Asia, Middle East and Africa, and about 3% in South America. So you guys are well represented. You could be a little higher, but you're very active, and that's great, because it means I get to come to Brazil often, and I like to come to Brazil. As I said, we've got a formal process. I won't go into the details. It's all written down, because like I said, open standards have to have written, transparent ways of doing things. But basically, from initial proposal to the creation of drafts, to the finalization and the maintenance of the spec, at various stages there are votes taken by the executive committee, public reviews, and you get feedback and so on. So it's a formal process. Remember I said the executive committee has two roles. One is voting at various stages in this process. The other is defining how we function. I think of that as changing our constitution. We have two documents that define how the organization functions. One's called the JSPA, which is a legal agreement that talks about intellectual property rights and licensing, and the other is the process document that I mentioned earlier that talks about how we develop these things. These two documents together, you can think of them as the specification for the organization itself. And since we have a way of revising specifications, because that's what we're all about, we decided we use exactly the same process to define and change the specifications for how we operate. So if we want to make a change in the way the JCP works, we file a JSR, I act as the spec lead, the executive committee acts as the expert group, and we produce public drafts and we go through the review process for one or other or both of these documents. And at the end of the day, we put the new versions into effect and they change the rules about how we operate. We've done a bunch of these, though I want to mention a couple. The first one we did, this is a smoke-filled room. People used to say that we operated in a secretive manner, that these expert groups, you didn't really know who they were, you had no visibility into what they were doing. They'd go away for a year or two, and then at the end of the day, something would pop out the other end, but you wouldn't know how they got to where they went, where they ended up. And we said, no more of that. We want you to do this work in public. We want you to have public mailing lists, public issue trackers, accept feedback from the community, and people should be able to see and comment on and influence what you do. Pretty simple. We implemented that, and as a result, we had a lot more participation from members of the Java community who previously felt that they were frozen out. Skip this one. Skip this one. We have another one that we just got approval to release this one just this morning. This is going to introduce new classes of membership specifically targeted towards individual developers such as yourselves. It is possible today to join the JCP as an individual, but you have to get your employer's approval and permission, and that can be complicated. We have a new class of membership with a simpler agreement that you don't need to go to your employer. And more importantly, you can get formal recognition for your contributions to a particular JSR without having to join the expert group and make an enormous commitment of time. You can do something smaller and still get your name listed as someone who has contributed to this piece of the Java platform. And think about it, when you go out for a job and there's two people, one of them says, I know how to use whatever, Java server faces. The other one says, not only do I know how to use it, but I actually helped to create the specification. If you go look it up on jcp.org, you'll see my name there. Well, which one's going to get the job? It's pretty obvious. So it's a community organization. We've tried to make it very open and very transparent, and we encourage people to get involved and to participate. And as individual developers such as yourselves, we learned fairly early on that if you join just as an individual, you're going to feel kind of isolated, you won't quite know what to do. And a much better way to get organized and to participate is through your Java user group. Obviously, you guys are a Java user group, which is great. And we have a whole bunch of Java user groups. I don't think I see you here, so you need to join. Maybe the list is incomplete, but we have more than 50 Java user groups that are members of the JCP. There's no charge to join, so we encourage you to join and to work through a program called Adopt to JSR, which was defined by SoJava and the London Java community, the two user groups that are now represented on the executive committee. And this is basically a program whereby members of a Java user group say, I've got an interest in a particular technology and I want to follow it and to help with developing the next version of that technology. And you can look it up online. There are instructions as to how to get started. I encourage people to do this not because it's the right thing to do, though it is, but because it'll be good for your career. You'll grow your network, you'll make new contacts, but more importantly, you will gain a whole bunch of skills which are really important once you get beyond being a hotshot programmer. The world is full of hotshot programmers, and out there is always somebody that is younger than you and smarter than you who will work for less money than you. What makes the difference in how you get on in your career, I'm assuming you're all smart technically, that's not the point. But there are other skills, verbal and written communications, negotiation, collaboration, compromising, when to compromise, when to not, how to persuade other people to adopt your point of view. And all of those skills are what distinguish a good technical programmer from a really smart, helpful person who earns twice as much money and is much more employable. So it's good for your career if you do this kind of work. We have people from all over the world working through Adopt to JSR. We've got more than 28 user groups, many in Brazil, as you can see, who've made real contributions to the development of Java. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do, from relatively simple things like helping with documentation to complicated things like actually doing the implementation or developing tests, and anything in between. So you don't have to be a super expert to be able to do something useful. There's something for everybody. And in fact, the SoJava guys who created this program, or helped to define this program in the first place, had the idea that at every level you can learn from someone who knows a little bit more than you and has a bit more experience than you, and you can teach someone who has a little less experience than you. So everybody helps each other and you all grow technically and socially. So there's instructions online for how to join. If you're not interested, if you'd rather work on the implementation instead of the specifications, there are open source projects for Java SE, OpenJDK, and Java EE, Project Glassfish, and you can participate in those. And if you do that, then you get to be part of the future of Java. You can define some nifty technology like this Java-powered kitchen magical audio-visual device or whatever. Java's going to be around. Java's 20 years old last year. I don't know if it'll last till the 25th century, but it's certainly going to be around for a long time to come. You other guys are going to be using it 20, 30 years from now. I'll be long retired by then. But what Java is going to look like 20 or 30 years from now is not just up to the big guys like IBM and Oracle, but you can actually help to define that too. So I encourage you to do so. We've tried to make the process transparent and open and easy for you guys to participate, so take a look and come and join us. Okay, just about an hour. If you have any questions, I'll take a few minutes just to take questions.
Quer fazer alguma pergunta?
Você não tem pergunta também, não?
What do you think that it's going to be about the Java language and about 20 or 30 years from now? What do you really think that it's going to be about?
Dr. Otavi is more qualified to answer that question than me, but I don't think anybody can look 30 years into the future. I mean, look at what I was doing 30 years ago, right? Assembly language. Back then, even the notion of something as simple, well, we had subroutines, sort of. But the notion of writing code had not been invented, object-oriented programming had not been thought of, functional programming had not been thought of. So I don't think we can predict. It will kind of emerge from the technical community and the development. The Java language evolves relatively slowly, and that's deliberate. James Gosling invented it. He quite deliberately made it simple. He said, computer languages are read much more than they are written. So what's really important is that it be simple and it be understandable. And he deliberately left out features, multiple inheritance, for example, that he felt complicated things. Now, things have changed since then. We've introduced stuff like generics, which makes my head spin, to be honest. But still, the guys who are responsible for leading the evolution of the language are deliberately take things very slowly. So over the next 5 years, you may not see a lot of change. But yeah, in 30 years, who knows? But maybe I should also say one other thing. People talk about Java, and they tend to think about the Java language. Java is not just the language, Java is the platform. In fact, the important thing about Java is not the language anymore, although it is a very important language. It's the runtime. It's the virtual machine. And there are probably 50 different languages that run on top of the Java virtual machine, to the extent that today, if you define a new language and you want an implementation of it, you'd be crazy, like the PHP guys did, to go and write your own runtime, because for 20 years now, some of the best engineers on the planet have been tweaking the Java virtual machine and optimizing it and getting it to the point where it will run interpreted code faster than hand-tuned assembly language code. It's that good. Humans are just not as good as software. So there may not be a Java language even 5 or 10 years from now. Arguably, there is not one today. People use multiple languages on the Java virtual machine. Twitter is on the executive committee. Twitter has a lot of code written in, I think, in Scala. And 2 or 3 years ago, what's the thing they used to flash up on the screen when Twitter crashed? It was a whale or something, right? You see that all the time. Anyway, their systems didn't scale. They were crashing all the time. The performance was hopeless. And they said, we got to switch. We were going to throw away the existing runtime, and we're going to switch to the Java virtual machine. And they got something like a 4 or 5 times increase in performance and a 10, 50 times increase in reliability. So 30 years from now, Java, the world will be very different, but something like the Java virtual machine or the next 7 generations of the Java virtual machine will still be around and will be running whatever it is we're doing. Long answer. I should probably stop and let Ottavio, or maybe, I don't know if we're taking a break in between, but I've used up my time anyway, so thank you for listening. Thank you for the opportunity to come to Brazil.